Hi everyone, welcome to English for You. I'm Kat.
And I'm Reese.
And today we've got some fun facts for you.
I love fun facts.
Yeah, the fun fact articles are always a good time. They are always fun. That's the point.
And I always learn something super interesting from these fun fact articles.
Exactly. This is actually something I did not know about before, the thing we are discussing today.
The thing is...
It's language. It's the origins of several different words. And it's words that we use, I'd say, every day.
Pretty much every day.
Multiple times a day.
And they're words describing things that we see and use and walk on every day.
Or drive on.
Or drive on.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can guess, we're probably talking about like roads, streets, boulevards. No, we're not talking about boulevards, but avenues. So we're going to learn a little bit about why we have so many words for these. Because you think about, like, all streets are kind of just streets, right?
Right. It's like a road.
Yeah,
as
a
in
road.
the thing that the car drives on, and then usually a sidewalk either side.
Yeah, exactly.
So can there be
but a
much...
street is kind of the same thing.
Right. So how are they different and where do these words come from? These are all questions we're going to answer in today's article.
Yeah, so we're going to discover a little bit about how language changes and in this case in particular, how we got the word road. So let's get started.
Reading.
Fun facts. It's hard to imagine two towns that aren't connected by roads and streets. There was a time, though, when such long pathways weren't common. Thus, the words road and street had meanings that are different from what we know today. About 500 years ago, a road was a type of journey, as there were few actual roads for crossing England's hills and plains. It was difficult to travel between towns, and the trip required walking or taking a horse across several kilometers. Travelers would simply find the smoothest route. Eventually, the route itself was called the road. The writer William Shakespeare shows how the word started to change in the 15th century. He used the word road with both meanings in his plays. A street, on the other hand, meant a short path where you would find houses and other buildings. Streets are where people would live, socialize, and do their shopping at the market. Today, when we think of a road, we imagine any paved street that connects two places. The words now have quite similar meanings. Okay, our article starts out today. It's hard to imagine two towns that aren't connected by roads and streets. So, yeah, we're getting right into it with a grammar point, which means we won't have another one today.
Yes.
Yeah. Yay! So, first one, we've got this it, be verb, and maybe not, an adjective for somebody to be. It is adjective for somebody to be. So, we're using it. It's kind of an interesting explanation for this. It is called a dummy subject, which makes it sound like it's stupid, but all that means it's standing in for nothing. But you can also think of it as the thing after to of the object or phrase, or the object of the phrase. So if you say, it is fun for me to eat sandwiches, then I could also say, eating sandwiches is fun for me. So you could think of it is fun for me to eat sandwiches, it being eating sandwiches. So another example, it's good weather today. The weather is good today. It's hard to speak another language. Speaking another language is hard. But when you add for somebody to do something, it becomes about difficulty or about how that person feels about it. So this sentence says, it's hard for us to imagine two towns, something like that. So it means that imagining that thing is a hard thing for us to do. It's hard to imagine. It's easy for you to say, is another one we use often. That's easy for you to say, saying this is easy for you. Like, it's easy for you to say that.
That poor subject being called a dummy all the time.
I know. It's actually pretty smart because it makes it easier for us to talk.
Yes, we like dummy subjects. They are really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the article continues and it says, there was a time, though, when such long pathways weren't common. Thus, the words road and street had meanings that are different from what we know today.
That is true.
That is true. And language changes over time, and this is an example of how language changes. But there are a few words to talk about here. Let's talk about the word pathway.
So it's another word for road, street.
Another one of those things that you can walk or drive along. So the word pathway can be broken into two words, path and way. So a pathway is a track or a road that leads the way to a place. We often use the word pathway to talk about small paths that lead through parks or along streets, but the word isn't terribly specific. We could use it to talk about bigger roads too.
When I think of a pathway, I think of, something that goes through a park.
Yeah.
Or the mountains.
We could also maybe say like a footpath.
Yeah, a footpath. Notice how we're saying it differently. He says path, I say path. It's because of British and American accent.
You say tomato.
I say tomato, you say tomato. Tomato, yes.
Well, how about this word thus? Thus. Thus is an adverb, and we can use it to mean as a result or consequence of this, or therefore, or so. So the words that come after the word thus are the reasons for or an explanation to the idea that came before. It's easier to learn how to use this word through examples. So here are some. Sammy won the last fight and thus became the school's champion boxer.
Woohoo!
Here's another example sentence. Dr. Birch is absent today, thus his appointments will be moved to next Tuesday.
All right, so thus, let's get on with the article. So we're talking about roads, streets, pathways, but we're saying there was a time when long pathways were not that common. So you think of the highways you drive on today to go from city to city. Those didn't always exist. About 500 years ago, the article says, a road was a type of journey, as there were few actual roads for crossing England's hills and plains. Of course, we know that English comes from England, so the word road, of course, would have come from England. Now, we're talking about a road being a kind of journey, and a journey here is a noun, means a long trip that you go on. It's usually going from point A to point B, and it implies some difficulty or a long time in getting there. Other words that are similar to journey might be voyage, when you are taking a journey on the sea usually, or on a boat. A trip. That could be a short one, a long one, could be anything, any kind of travel. Or an adventure if you're having an exciting and new kind of journey. But a journey, it's about being a long trip. So before cars, every trip out of town was a journey. A person who takes the journey is a journeyman or a traveler, which we will talk about later. Now here's an example of journey. We took a journey around Taiwan on our bikes, and we managed to get back to Taipei in 12 days.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's about what I've heard it takes to get around the island.
Cycling around Taiwan. Wow, goodness. I thought I knew something about roads, and it's that they were invented by the Romans initially.
Well, they say all roads lead to Rome, and I think that's what that phrase comes from. Yeah.
Those long, straight roads, I think specifically, were made by Romans, although I guess...
Paved roads.
Paved roads, but people have been walking along the same tracks for millennia, I suppose.
Yeah, you know, there will always be roads that were trodden down by people, basically pushed into the ground by people's feet.
Yeah, that's a road too. Well, the article continues and it says, it was difficult to travel between towns, and the trip required walking or taking a horse across several kilometers or kilometers, however you prefer. Well, there's a word to talk about here, and it's the word required. Require is a verb, and if something is required, or if you require something, that means you need that thing. That thing is needed. We require food and water to survive. It's just a fancy word for need. So in the context of the article, the author is saying that to move between towns, lots of walking or horse riding was required. You needed to walk or ride a long way to get from place to place. So here's an example sentence. You are required to bring your own pen and paper to the English exam.
So you need to bring your own pen and paper.
You need to do it.
Got it. So, yeah, if you were taking a long journey across several kilometers, walking or riding a horse or a wagon, and what the article says is, travelers would simply find the smoothest route or route. We'll talk about that later. But first we have this word traveler, which I did mention before. Traveler is a noun, the journey is the trip, and the traveler is the person taking it. So, as you probably know, the verb to travel means to go on a trip. And then if you add ER to the end of it, that means person who does something. So, a traveler is a person who travels. You've probably been a traveler in your life. If you're a traveler going somewhere just for fun, you're called a tourist. You're going on a tour. Now, travelers usually aren't always traveling, but if you are somebody who travels all the time, you are called a nomad or a wanderer. That's a special kind of traveler. Somebody who travels their whole life, basically. But yeah, let's take a look at an example sentence for traveler. We met some travelers on the road to the church who had big backpacks with them. Yeah, you see a lot of backpackers in towns that are famous for tourist spots.
Yeah, hitchhiking sometimes, which is not the safest way to get around.
Yeah, and I've heard that people don't really do that in Taiwan.
No.
That if you stuck your thumb out on the side of the road, people would not know what you were trying to do.
Yeah, be like, hey, cool, thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs to the side.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
Well,
so what about route?
Yeah, this word route or route, as we would say in British English.
Well, either way in American English, I think.
Yeah, well, route is a noun and a route is a way to a place. It's kind of another synonym for other words that we've been talking about today. When you're planning a journey, you will make a route. It's the path you will follow. A way or course taken in getting from a starting point to a destination. So the route is the way that you're going.
Yeah, and some long roads, especially interstate highways, are called routes, like Route 66.
Very
I always think
famous.
of that. Yeah.
I'd love to drive it one day.
Me too.
And then we have another word here, which is smooth or smoothest. Smooth is an adjective, and we often use smooth to describe something's physical surface or texture. Something that is smooth has an even and regular surface with no lumps or bumps. So a whiteboard has a very smooth surface. If you run your finger down it, it will make a squeaky noise. We can also use smooth, however, to describe a process or journey. So if you have a smooth journey somewhere, that means the journey was easy and there were no problems along the way. There were no bumps in the road. The superlative form of smooth, smoothest, used in the article means the most smooth. So an example sentence could be, the class meeting was smooth and easy. Nobody had any problems to report.
Right. So a smooth journey or smooth route or route might mean maybe you avoid going over mountains, you try and stay on flat land, you don't go through forests because they might, have bears or something. There are wolves, I guess. Anyway, so you try and find, the easiest route, the easiest road.
Yeah.
And what does it say about the word road?
Well, the article continues with, eventually the route itself was called the road.
Yeah, so eventually it became less of the journey and more of the path you take on the journey. So we have this word eventually here. Eventually is an adverb. It's one of my favorite adverbs because you can kind of say it dramatically. Eventually, I will do it. So eventually means in time or soon enough. Eventually carries this meaning that something is expected to happen. You're supposed to do something, but you might not know when in the future. It could take a long time. It could take a little time. It'll happen sometime. However, if somebody says, I'll do my homework eventually, it means they're probably not going to start doing it for a while. Something that eventually happens doesn't really have a person trying to make it happen. It just happens in the due course of time or after somebody else pushed it to happen. Like if you say, I'll do my homework eventually, and your mom says, you better do it now, then maybe eventually you'll listen to her. So here's an example sentence. Harry and Jim were mad at each other for a while, but eventually they made up and became friends again.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
Everything's eventual.
Yeah.
What's that from?
I don't know.
I feel like that's the name of a book or a movie or something. Anyway.
Yeah, anyhow.
Eventually, I'll remember.
Eventually you will. Maybe it'll be after you leave, after you're in bed tonight and you're like, wake up and that's what it's from.
Yeah, probably.
That happens to me.
I'll send you a message.
Okay, all right. So the article goes on to say, the writer William Shakespeare shows how the word started to change in the 15th century. He used the word road with both meanings in his plays. Yeah, Shakespeare is probably the most famous writer in the English language, I think.
Sure. And he's been around for a while. And
yes.
He added
500 years.
500 years.
600 years. Yeah.
He added so much to the English language. He invented so many words that we use today.
Yeah, he did.
I think the word excellent might be from Shakespeare.
It might be. I know there's a bunch of other ones that, yeah, you would not expect to have invented, but he did invent them.
So many words and phrases.
That I can't remember right now.
Yeah. And his writing is sometimes difficult to read, especially if English is not your first language.
Yes, because it's old now.
Yeah, but I would encourage you give it a try because his stories are really fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And they can be really funny, really tragic and sad, anything. So anyway, what about the word street? Because I think we need to learn what in the world is the difference between a road and a street?
Well, the article tells us exactly that. It says, a street, on the other hand, meant a short path where you would find houses and other buildings.
Ah.
Okay, so before we talk a bit more about streets, let's talk about this phrase, on the other hand. So this phrase is used to introduce a contrasting point of view, fact, or situation. So the words that come after the phrase, on the other hand, are going to explain a point that is different or opposite to what was said before. So, for example, we could say, we could go and eat hot pot for dinner. On the other hand, soup and salad sounds tasty too.
Oh, I'm actually going to eat hot pot tonight.
So good.
Yes.
Mala, I love the spicy.
I like mala too, but I think I'm going to someplace else that was recommended to me. Anyway, so yeah, now we know on the other hand. I think the first sentence could also have on the one hand, right? On the one hand, this. On the other hand, that.
There we are.
Yeah. Okay, so what about streets? Streets are where people would live, socialize, and do their shopping at the market. So, sounds pretty busy. So, of course, you know, if you live there, that means you come out of your house and you see a lot of things, you do your shopping, and you socialize. When you socialize, that means you are being social. It means you hang out with people, you talk to others. If you're being with your friends and spending fun and casual time with other people, that's socializing. When you go to a restaurant with your friends, you might socialize with them for a long time. You don't just sit there and eat. You go there so you can talk to each other and have fun. That's socializing. So I guess streets would be a good place to do that.
Yeah, streets are very social places, you know. I remember the road or the street that I grew up on. We would often have like street parties with our neighbors.
Oh yeah, I think we had block parties too, but we didn't have them on the street or on the road because sometimes cars would drive too fast. So we'd have them at the house.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, the article finishes up here, at least for day one. It says, today, when we think of a road, we imagine any paved street that connects two places. The words now have quite similar meanings.
Yeah, so when I think of a road, I think of something that's kind of like a little more country, maybe some big houses that are far apart, but a street to me is busier. Like a night market to me is a street.
Right.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on Colton Road, and it was a very residential area.
I grew up on Prairie Road.
Prairie Road. It's such a nice name.
Yeah.
But I think the road that I grew up on feels more like a street because it was full of houses and it was very busy and there were shops and small restaurants as well on that
that's
road.
Cool.
So I guess that would be more of a street by the definition that the article is explaining. But we also had streets in our town too.
Yeah, I mean, we had streets in town, but I lived outside of town, so I think it was more of a road for ours. Because, you know, it was called Prairie Road because it was on the prairie.
On the prairie.
Which is like the desert in the western part of the United States.
Sounds so idyllic.
It was beautiful. Anyway, so that's all the time we've got for day one. Of course, in day two, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but right now, let's go to our For You chat.
You Chat.
Okay, our For You Chat question for today. What is the longest journey you've taken on the road? Oh man. Where did you go and did you enjoy the trip? I'll let you tell me.
Sure. Well, I think the longest journey I've taken, I'm from England, and England is not a terribly big country. So I haven't done too much long-distance driving there because you'll hit the sea before long. But I did go to the United States, and I went to the West Coast with my friend, and we spent about 2 weeks driving around California and Nevada.
Oh, that's cool.
We did San Francisco to LA to Vegas.
Yes.
Vegas to South Lake Tahoe.
Oh, Lake Tahoe's beautiful.
And then Lake Tahoe back to San Francisco. So it was a lot of driving, and
that's like around where I was born and like where my family would visit every year. I lived in Idaho, so we would go visit my family in California each year, and we would drive about 13 hours total. Usually stay overnight in Nevada. But I think the longest trip that I've been on is from Idaho to Colorado.
Wow, that's far.
Yeah, or no, Colorado to Idaho, because
Okay.
I was going from Colorado. Yeah, which took probably a total of 2 days driving. Like, I've never done a longer road trip than that. But I do like road trips, and I think I'd enjoy a longer one.
Yeah, there's something quite magical about driving across big open spaces like in the US. It's something I kind of romanticized in my mind from when I was younger.
You have to do it. If you guys go to the US, students who are listening, you have to take a road trip. It is so beautiful. It is so worth it. Take music with you and take some books with you. You won't be bored. You'll love it.
It's so amazing. And people like me, or maybe our Taiwanese friends who are from small island countries, it's an extra special experience because that kind of space just doesn't exist where we're from.
Exactly. Yeah, all right. So that means we're going to head on out for today, but we will see you tomorrow for day 2 and talk a little bit more about different roads. Bye-bye.
See you then.
Fun facts. It's hard to imagine 2 towns that aren't connected by roads and streets. There was a time, though, when such long pathways weren't common. Thus, the words road and street had meanings that are different from what we know today. About 500 years ago, a road was a type of journey, as there were few actual roads for crossing England's hills and plains. It was difficult to travel between towns, and the trip required walking or taking a horse across several kilometers. Travelers would simply find the smoothest route. Eventually, the route itself was called the road. The writer William Shakespeare shows how the word started to change in the 15th century. He used the word road with both meanings in his plays. A street, on the other hand, meant a short path where you would find houses and other buildings. Streets are where people would live, socialize, and do their shopping at the market. Today, when we think of a road, we imagine any paved street that connects 2 places. The words now have quite similar meanings.
Vocabulary Review. Thus, Jimmy was late for the test. Thus, he had less time to take it than his classmates. Journey. A long flight, a train ride, and a trip by bus were all part of my journey to the small town. Require. Hiking up this tall mountain requires a lot of strength and a few bottles of water. Traveler. About 1 million travelers pass through the city's airport and its main train station every day. Smooth. At night, the wind stopped and the lake was so smooth that it looked like a mirror. Eventually. David kept forgetting to water his plants. They survived for a while, but they eventually died.
智慧小补帖
Pathway. Route. Socialize.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net